homer, led the league in tackles with 85. The deep ball for Darius Prince, and Philadelphia's on the board first.
On the draw, this is Bryson Allen. And Allen weaving his way all the way down to the 22. 10-yard line, 5. Mayfield, dancing all around. Throwing as far as he can throw it. Jump ball coming. Crazy stuff. Not this time.
And you want to be a wide receiver. You're going to have to take a little bit of a hit like that as Brown got him in that shoulder, but watch. Those are teeth.
Do we have a dentist on staff here?
Shady Sports, I'm back here with a very special interview. I'm here with Billings Outlaw owner Steven Titus. How you doing tonight, boss?
Good. It's been a long few days, but I think we finally got past our worst days, and there's a bright future ahead.
I'm really excited for the new leadership, and we'll touch on that down the show, but I kind of wanted to dive right in. You know, this past weekend, your Billings Outlaws took a 5-hour bus trip to Rapid City, South Dakota. You got there, really excited to play the game. I was really excited to watch. And unfortunately, some events transpired. Can you kind of give us a background of what really went down?
Yeah, absolutely. So my guys in Billings, they left Billings about between 8 and 9 o'clock in the morning. I have a place in Billings and a place in Gillette, Wyoming, where I practice law. And so the guys, Gillette's basically halfway between Billings and Rapid City. So we had the guys stop in Billings. We had lunch there and then kind of sent the guys on their way to Rapid City, and I was going to meet them there later that day. They were all on the bus. I get to Rapid City probably between 3 and 3:30, and the owner of the Marshals approaches me essentially and says, "Steve, we have a problem." And at that time, I kind of was informed that Rapid City was staging a coup due to their lack of the AFL fulfilling its obligations. And there was some back and forth negotiation between the players and the coaches, or the players and the ownership. The ownership was, in my mind, fulfilling all of its obligations that it was supposed to be fulfilling to the players. However, they wanted the ownership of the Marshals to essentially assume the obligations of the AFL. And we're getting close to – my guys are warming up on the field. Finally, about 5 o'clock, I think the negotiations somewhat stalled, and I essentially said, we need to decide, are we playing or not, because I want my guys to get home. If they're not playing, we're wasting everyone's time. The gates were about to open, and I was then informed close to 5 o'clock that the game wasn't going to be played. And at that point, we didn't have any kind of dinner reservations or anything like that, but we knew we weren't playing a football game. So Coach Walker says, let's just go to Golden Corral. It's right there. You don't need reservations to go there. So got the guys dinner, and then they came back to Billings.
You know, what steps as an organization, obviously that whole situation wasn't on you, but as a league, do you think the league needs to take to avoid a situation like that ever happening again?
Well, I think we need to make sure that everyone's on the same page about whose obligations are to who, whether it's the league making these obligations, whether it's the ownership making these obligations, because even as recently as 2 weeks ago, the league, and I'm going to say this now, Lee Hutton had promised the CIF teams that the players would be paid essentially on prepaid gift cards or reloadable cards for player pay, where they would be receiving the AFL portion of their paychecks from the AFL, and then the teams would be responsible for what they were responsible for. It came to fruition that was just another of Lee Hutton's lies and deceit, and trying to just get people to, get these young players to play for nothing or very little of what they were contractually obligated to pay. And so, if everyone was on the same page from the beginning of who's doing what, I don't think this kind of thing would happen. But this was an evident failure of Lee Hutton and his AFL.
No doubt. And I kind of wanted to talk about the league. Obviously, it's known out there in public that they were owed $750 and teams were responsible for the other $250 per
Right.
player. Do you see the AFL ever getting this year or in the future to that $1,000 minimum?
Well, essentially, I think there needs to be different levels of pay based on qualifications. There's a difference between a rookie pay and a veteran pay, and it's really kind of the IFL model to some degree, as there's different pay based on different qualifications. Here, the AFL, over objections from the owners, went to this $1,000 per player minimum. I can't tell you the number of conversations that Coach Walker had with the former CEO and the former commissioner about how that was going to create problems. Because as an owner, we have to plan worst case scenario. And so right away, I planned what's going to happen if the AFL doesn't fulfill its obligations to me and the Billings Outlaws. And so we put measures in place internally to ensure that the players are paid in Billings, even if they weren't, we didn't have the AFL promised subsidy to take care of our guys. And so, I think the $1,000 minimum created a sandbox that didn't need to occur. I think the IFL minimum is $250, or their maximum is $250 a game, or something to that effect. There's no reason that we had any minimum whatsoever. It really stopped, the teams from negotiating with the players, because $1,000 a week in Billings is different than $1,000 a week in another team, because we provide, and I'm not saying, I don't know what other teams do. I'm sure that they're similar maybe, but we provide 3 meals a day, we provide housing, we provide transportation to the away games. We a lot of the things that we go above and beyond what the minimum set is for our team here in Billings. And that's because of the great partners we have, the great, sales staff we have, the great team, front office staff we have. We make sure our players are taken care of. And so, $1,000 a week somewhere else when they're only getting 1 meal a day and having to subsidize their housing may not be the same as $1,000 a week in somewhere like Billings. And so, I think that artificial minimum has caused a catastrophe of problems, and the league was well aware that these problems could come up, and they ignored us. I mean, they ignored it. And that's what happens when you have people with no experience trying to run that league. They're promising this and that and everything, and they have no intention of fulfilling these promises. It was a scam. And I feel like I was a victim of a scam. I mean, I'm a smart guy. I've done successful in business, but I got scammed by Lee Hutton and Travell Gaines, and I know the other owners feel the exact same way.
At what point did you think that Lee Hutton and Terrell Gaines were liars and weren't telling the truth?
Well, I don't. I think there's always good intentions, but there's an old saying that says the path to hell is paved with bricks of good intentions, and there was no honesty. When they knew that they couldn't do something, they should have came to us early in advance to where we can make adjustments. We knew probably 3 weeks before the season started that when the league started talking to certain teams to see if we could sustain our own salary or not, or if we would need league subsidies, that we knew there were some problems. I think when we had a production company doing our games with NFL Network, and they stopped calling our weekly calls, we knew there were problems. And again, this is all 3 weeks before week 1. But I think that it all came to fruition when we saw week 1, when we saw the product that was on the field in certain venues that was not AFL quality. It was not CIF quality. It was not IFL quality. It was not semi-pro quality. It was a problem. And when I saw that, we knew we had a big problem on our hand. And right after week 1 is kind of when I spoke up, sitting right here, when I was telling, when I was doing that interview, that we have some pretty big problems and Lee needs to go as soon as possible. At that point, I think that there were a lot of teams like, really, what's going on? And everything started to come to fruition very quick that we have problems.
As an owner, of a successful team in this industry, what would your advice to other owners who might be struggling on how to effectively stabilize the payroll?
Yeah. I think first is you got to be realistic. What can you afford and what can't you afford? You're going to lose money your first 2 years. There's no doubt about it. And you're going to lose six figures a year. Like, that's just what's going to happen. However, once cities start to trust you, once you start to put a reliable product on the field, things change quickly. And I think we're going through that transition right now in Billings, where we had the first owner of the revamped Outlaws caused a host of problems. We did our part to clean it up. Year 2 was kind of a rebuilding year as well. Year 3 with Coach Walker here, we really are on the end phase of the rebuilding, and it is what it is at this point. Either it's going to work or it's not going to work. Find people that you trust, and this kind of takes over your life to a large degree. And so, you have to have the right people, because if you don't have the right people, people are going to steal from you. People are going to not make the follow-up phone calls on sales. You're not going to have the right playing staff here. You're not going to have the right players on and off the field. And so you really have to lean on the people that you surround yourself with. Coach Walker and Coach Bonner are very skilled, experienced guys that know how to run things. They were involved in very successful organizations. And so, this is my 3rd season with Coach Walker, and I'm never going to let the guy go. So I'm very pleased with where the organization's going. But you got to trust people too. You can't go into this business and think you know everything, because this is a world unlike anything else. This is its own very unique industry. There's a lot of shady characters. There's a lot of great people too. I've met some of the best people I've ever met in my life in the indoor and arena football world. And there's some of the shadiest people I've ever met as well. So, you've got to answer the phone. You got to make the phone calls. You got to work that little bit extra to make sure, the website's updated with game times and accurate stories, and making sure the social media part is fixed, and make sure the stream's working right, making sure the scoreboard's working right. So it's all attention to details. And so we're doing everything we can here in Billings to build a championship franchise. And ultimately we're focused on beating Salina here on Saturday night.
When you took over the Outlaws, what approach did you take to kind of reestablish the relationship with the partners and the sponsors?
Right. It's kind of just, falling on the sword. Hey, I'm sorry this happened. I'm sorry that you went through this. I had nothing to do with it. I'm a lot different than the old owner. The old owner didn't have a pot to piss in or a window to throw it out of. But, I have a law license on the line. I'm not going to lose my law license over lies in a football team. That means more to me than anything. I've established myself. I live here in Billings. We've invested a lot in Billings. Understand the community. Make sure the players are more involved with the community, more school visits, more youth groups, more simple going to the YMCA, being seen in public, and having a good off-the-field presence, I think, is extremely important. But one of the important things is winning fixes a lot, too. If you can win, winning fixes a lot of your problems. And so making sure that we have the right talent, we have the right coaches, we have the right players is equally important as well. So all that combined, I think we're seeing biggest attendance we've seen in 3 years. We're seeing a lot more community engagement. We're seeing a lot more positive response from the media, a lot more media coverage of our games. We're just reestablishing those connections. I think being part of a big brand such as the AFL was the right move. I think it puts us on the national stage. I just wish we wouldn't have had Lee Hunton the last almost year, but it is what it is, and we're moving in the right direction.
When you look at these CIF teams, you see a lot of adaptability. The Nets are up to par for the most part for Wichita, Salina, Southwest Kansas, and Billings. And the Dasherpads compared to other markets like Oregon and Philly. When you look at that, speak about how great the connection and partnership is of the ownership groups with CIF.
You didn't know. I mean, when we were in the CIF, we had our complaints. We were always trying to be better. We didn't think it could be worse being part of the AFL, but it was worse. I mean, you see some of the fields that were put together, and this is just poor leadership from the AFL. I mean, that's all it is people not knowing what they're doing, not asking for help, not asking for guidance, pretending like they know it all. To me, that just shows this was all a sham from the get-go, because the details to have a successful football game and a successful football organization were not in place. Why did every single one of the 6 league-owned teams fail because they didn't know what they were doing. They didn't trust the people that did know what they were doing. There are people out there that do know what they're doing that could have been sought after for advice, but I think it was all a facade. I really do. And maybe there was good intent, maybe there wasn't. I don't know. But at the end of the day, the CIF does have good intent. Us CIF teams, we knew what we were doing. We put a quality product on the field. We made sure that our dasher pads were there. We made sure our streaming was working. We made sure that everything that is the bare minimum for indoor and arena football was put into place. But at the end of the day, I don't think that Lee Hutton cared about that because he was all about whatever money grab he could get. And here's an example. In October and November of this last year, every team had the option to spend $10,000 on footballs. And so most of us all sent $10,000 in. We sent our sponsorship logos in. We sent our high definition graphics to be placed on these Wilson footballs. Come to find out, the footballs, this was, 6-7 months ago now. Come to find out, we sent these checks in October and November. They were immediately cashed, or the wires went through immediately. The order wasn't placed until late December, early January. And according to our Wilson rep, none of our logos or printing that we paid extra for will actually be on it. I mean, this is just lies, deceit, fraud. And unfortunately, we're all victims of it. But I'm also done talking about, I'm just tired of I'm exhausted talking about everything that we did wrong in the old AFL. And I'm ready to start looking forward to the Jeff Fisher era of the AFL. We have a great organization with G6 Sports, with Chris Chetty and Anthony Rossi, that's looking forward to making the change we need to make the AFL successful. But no, I slept with this every night that I was the victim of Lee Hutton, and we were kind of all scammed out of a lot of money here.
I wanted to touch on the new ownership, kind of going more positively, right? Jeff Fisher, well-known NFL head coach, and, Chris Chetty at G Sports, like you mentioned, they're very well-spoken people. They have their stuff together. What about them makes you believe that they can move the AIF and the AFL in the right direction immediately?
Yeah, absolutely. They have the knowledge, resources, and skill set to move the organization forward. I mean, just talking to them, they want to know our opinions. They want to make informed decisions. They're advising us of decisions. For when Lee was commissioner, it was this is how it's going to be. One time in the whole year in the AFL, we voted on something. We voted on a rule change. Lee Hutton decides he's going to veto the rule change. So the one time we as owners actually voted on rules, he vetoed it. And right then, this is not a dictatorship with someone telling us how to spend our money, because that's exactly what it is. But with Chris and Anthony, it's very much a very collaborative environment. It's very, let's talk this out. It's let's make joint decisions. It's let's figure this out together. Let's get the resources that you need to be successful. And so it's already a completely different environment that's much more collaborative, that's much more engaging and supportive than the old AFL ever was. So I'm very excited with Anthony Rossi, Chris Chetty, Jeff Fisher, our new leadership team in the AFL moving forward.
Anthony Rossi and Krish Chetty, they both have a background in media and digital footprint. When you look at the AFL and streaming and the NFL Network, what do you picture the last 5 weeks or 6 weeks of the season looking like in terms of that?
Yeah, I don't know what they have in store. I know that I know there's another. We have people in the front office vetting that kind of stuff right now and make recommendations. Our game is going to be on Vire this weekend, and so I don't know if we're going to use that app long term or not. I like it personally. I'm a big fan of it. It works pretty good, and it comes off pretty clear. I think that it's all about how the numbers work and what's in the best interest of the league, and that we'll make a joint decision on that moving forward. As far as the network games go, those are expensive, and so I'm not sure if that's something we're going to explore or not. I think all the cards are on the table with this new leadership, and I think that we'll be making these decisions jointly as a group together, which is how it should be. because at the end of the day, we're all going to be spending money on this thing, and no one should be telling us how to spend our money. We should be deciding as a collective how we should be spending our money. And that's what I'm excited for with this new group and this new leadership moving forward. It's a very democratic, collaborative environment. The first vote that we made as a group, we've all known each other now since September or October of last year. The first vote we ever made that was actually enacted was Jeff Fisher being our commissioner. And so, like I said, we made one vote on a rule change earlier, and that vote was vetoed essentially by Lee. But I think all of us owners are on the same page. I don't want to speak for anyone except for the Billings Outlaws, but I think all of us are on the page, and we're all very excited for the rest of the 2024 season and beyond.
If you were to vote on a playoff format and the location for a championship game, what would your vote be?
I have my idea of what the playoffs should be, but I'm going to leave that to the powers that be. I definitely would like to have more home games. I think we got to pay tribute to our crowd that supported us and got us to where we are, as well as to our players. There is definitely, if you read any kind of sports psychology, there's definitely a home field advantage. And so we've got to look at those options. We've got to look at how many teams are going to be with us at the end of the season, whether it's 10, 12, whatever it is. We got to look at that. And then we got to look at how long our regular season ends up being before that. There's some preliminary talks about maybe going to an 11-week season. I don't know yet. We just kind of got to figure out who's who, what's what, and go from there. But I anticipate that the final schedule should be released here sometime pretty soon. I know we're getting it fixed, but it's getting there. And so I don't know what's in store for the playoffs yet. But again, I trust our leadership team at the AFL to make the right decision.
I appreciate your time tonight. It's been great talking to you. My final question for you tonight is, when you look at the AFL 2 to 3 years down the line and the Billings Outlaws, what's your ideal vision for success?
Billings Outlaws is going for its 4th consecutive AFL championship. No, but that we have a big league. We have a competitive league. We have great travel deals with our companions, our partners. We have big national partnerships, and people are talking about the AFL as a spring league just as much as the NFL in the fall. So big vision. I think the AFL should be the summer version of the NFL, and I think we need to do what we need to do to get there. And I think with, Anthony Rossi, Chris Chetty, Jeff Fisher, and the owners that we currently have, great things are to come in our dark days, our bad days, our rock bottom is behind us, and brighter days are definitely ahead.
Without a doubt. And one last question. Do you have any updates on the Gillette Mustangs or the Gillette market as a whole?
It's an arena issue more than anything. Looking at these rebound nets, I'll be honest, before Billings' first home game, I'd never seen rebound nets before. But those things are massive. And we were in Gillette last year, we were hitting the lights with just the regular indoor football posts. And so unless there's a bigger arena, I think there are problems there. I think the only market in Wyoming that's viable is Casper. They have the Ford Center there. Then they also have an indoor practice facility right next to the Ford Event Center. And so I think in the long term, if there were to ever be a viable market in Wyoming, it would be Casper, just because of venue.
Again, appreciate your time, and I cannot wait to see the Outlaws win the AFL championship this year.
And I appreciate that, Chris. Me and you both will have an AFL trophy.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to put it right here. I've just right there.